know you didn't think anyone would catch you, but you just slammed your door into my car. The least you can do is say you're sorry, lady.
You don't have to take that tone. It's not like I'm hurting your resale value.
I'm sorry. See? Like that.
It's a sugar date. What if spring is late and winter it's a marshmallow world? It's the time for play. It's a whipped cream. It's the whole year round. Sun is bright like the pumpkin head. It's shining so you know you won't freeze. The world is your snowball, see how it grows. Whenever it snows, the world is your snowball just for a song. So get up and roll it along. It's the only world made for sweethearts. Take a walk with your favorite girl. It's a sugar date. What if spring is late and winter it's a marshmallow world. And winter it's a marshmallow
I don't know what happened. I just lost control of myself.
Well, welcome back. This is our last installment of Words with Friends. And so we brought in a special guest, our special best friend. He's everyone's best friend. It's Clint Gann. Clint, it's so good to have you tonight.
Well, thank you.
Instead of you talking at me during my sermon, we're just going to bring you right in the middle of it. Here you are.
That's been my goal.
So if all the technology worked out, you just watched a great clip from Malcolm in the Middle, which was a show that came on 20 years ago. All right, what did you guys see? By the way, tonight we're talking about peace. I interrupted my whole introduction here. We're talking about peace because I think that clip is a great example of what is not peace. What do you see in that you maybe recognize a little bit of yourself in?
I think it's easy to jump into conflict, even if you're the one that's initially you're looking for resolution, and you can be easily enticed into jumping into the conflict instead.
What escalated that, I think, was the personal comment. It's not like your car has much resale value. Yes. And now she's offended. Mm-hmm. But then it made me, I had a flashback to my childhood as I was watching this, remembering when your brother would hit you and then you would hit them back, but you always wanted to hit them back
harder.
Just a little bit harder.
You never wanted revenge. You wanted to be worse than what you received.
And then you would we actually got into an argument about which was harder. That wasn't harder. Mm-hmm. This is harder. And
so it escalated.
We were nearly in a parking lot driving each other down. Where does that rage come from? Why? I said it was a personal slight, but where does this rage that seems to, we just are easily accessible. I think everyone that watches that clip goes, yep, I've been there. Where does that come from?
Well, that's one of the interesting things about that particular clip is that the original conflict was nothing, just nothing important, nothing really of consequence. And if the woman who had who'd first banged the other car with her door, if she had simply said, "Oh, I'm sorry," that would have been the end of it.
Right. I love the last line where the mom says, I don't know.
I don't know how this happened.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. What are some of your flashpoints, Luke, where you just go from 0 to 60, from completely calm and cool to a raging maniac?
I think for me, it's when I'm accused of something that I feel I had, one, either no part of, or
Right.
two, I felt like I solved or did my best effort and it still wasn't good enough. So then it becomes a pride issue of, no,
Right.
I did that as well as anyone could have, and it's still a problem.
If my integrity's questioned,
Right.
I don't. There's a whole story Rhonda loves to tell about me asking a salesperson very loudly, "Are you calling me a liar?" It's a phrase that's come to mean something to us in the last 25 years. Rhonda knows that if I get really upset, she'll look at me and go, "Was somebody calling you a liar?" Like that. Those are the things that turn over. There's some other flashpoints that people are ready just to throw punches over. Right now, I don't want to wade too deeply into it, but
He had to go there.
yeah, politics is a flashpoint,
Right.
right?
Oh, yeah.
Where you can say something on social media, and it can just blow up
Right.
into what else? What else are some other things that people just can't seem to have a civil conversation about?
Well, I think when it comes to value of a person, I think that, yes, that goes with, abortion and stuff like that. But I think it also comes with the social justice stuff. When you're seen and somebody's like, "Oh no, that's not what they were meaning. That's not what they said." And it's like, well, that's how that person took it. And so now you're having a conversation about an opinion. And your opinion's your opinion, your opinion's your opinion. So you're never going to come to an understanding. But people just get set off until they're like, until you completely understand and rationalize my opinion, we're not going to be on level ground.
Clint, what are some other things that disturb the peace?
Well, you mentioned current events. Let's talk about masks.
Oh, let's don't.
Let's don't. Agreed. Let's
How
don't.
about no?
How about no?
Yeah.
And Luke mentioned, the debate on abortion. Well, more specifically, talk about Planned Parenthood.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
It's just a nightmare.
But it seems like we're more apt to just get into a rage to, we didn't even talk about this, but cancel culture now says that if I don't agree with you, not only do I think that you're wrong, but you ought to lose your job, you ought to lose your livelihood, you should be canceled,
Right.
right? Yeah. And we're gonna blow you up on Facebook and Twitter and everywhere else until your bosses know that you're a despicable person. And I guess you have to go where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth.
Right.
And we never see you again until you become woke, and then we can bring you back out. But, okay, that, I think, sets the stage well for this last installment of Words with Friends, as the Bible Project talks about peace. And if we've learned anything from Words with Friends, it's this. That word doesn't mean what you think it means, right?
Right.
And it always means something more.
Yeah.
We never look at a word and go, no, you're making way too big of a deal of that.
Yeah.
It's always you're making way too little
Yes.
of that.
Yeah.
So this is going to dig the well a little bit deeper tonight, and it's such a timely topic for when we talk about peace on earth, goodwill towards men. Watch this, and we'll come right back with some discussions.
The word peace is common in most languages. People can talk about peace treaties or times of peace. It means the absence of war. And in the Bible, the word peace can refer to the absence of conflict, but it also points to the presence of something better in its place. In the Old Testament, the Hebrew word for peace is shalom. And in the New Testament, the Greek word is eirene. The most basic meaning of shalom is complete or whole. The word can refer to a stone that has a perfect, whole shape with no cracks. It can also refer to a completed stone wall that has no gaps and no missing bricks. Shalom refers to something that's complex with lots of pieces that's in a state of completeness, wholeness. It's like Job, who says his tents are in a state of shalom because he counted his flock and no animals are missing. This is why shalom can refer to a person's well-being. Like when David visited his brothers on the battlefield, he asked about their shalom. The core idea is that life is complex, full of moving parts and relationships and situations, and when any of these is out of alignment or missing, your shalom breaks down. Life is no longer whole, it needs to be restored. In fact, that's the basic meaning of shalom when you use it as a verb. To bring shalom literally means to make complete or restore. So Solomon brings shalom to the unfinished temple when he completes it. Or if your animal accidentally damages your neighbor's field, you shalom them by giving them a complete repayment for their loss. You take what's missing and you restore it to wholeness. The same goes for human relationships. In the book of Proverbs, to reconcile and heal a broken relationship is to bring shalom. And when rival kingdoms make shalom in the Bible, it doesn't just mean they stop fighting, it also means they start working together for each other's benefit. This state of shalom is what Israel's kings were supposed to cultivate, and it rarely happened. So the prophet Isaiah, he looked forward to a future king, a prince of shalom, and his reign would bring shalom with no end. A time when God would make a covenant of shalom with his people and make right all wrongs and heal all that's been broken. This is why Jesus' birth in the New Testament was announced as the arrival of eirene. Remember, that's the Greek word for peace. Jesus came to offer his peace to others, like when he said to his followers, "My peace I give to you all." The apostles claimed that Jesus made peace between messed up humans and God when he died and rose from the dead. The idea is that he restored to wholeness the broken relationship between humans and their creator. This is why the Apostle Paul can say Jesus himself is our eirene. He was the whole complete human that I am made to be but have failed to be. And now he gives me his life as a gift. And this means that Jesus' followers are now called to create peace. Paul instructed local churches to keep their unity through the bond of peace, which requires humility and patience and bearing with others in love. Becoming people of peace means participating in the life of Jesus, who reconciled all things in heaven and earth, restoring peace through his death and resurrection. So peace takes a lot of work, because it's not just the absence of conflict. True peace requires taking what's broken and restoring it to wholeness, whether it's in our lives, our relationships, or in our world. And that's the rich biblical concept of peace.
All right, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that video. A little less violent than the first one. And we learned something new tonight. So we're going to go to Clint. What did you learn about shalom, about peace that maybe you hadn't thought about before?
I had never, ever heard or thought about that the biblical peace involves more than just ceasing of violence, but then a movement toward restoring or restoration of relationship, or even restoration of property.
Well,
making whole again was totally
and maybe
new.
that's the only way for lasting peace, because everybody can put down their weapons, but if you don't restore relationship, then
the tension is still there.
You're eventually going back to war. What do you think, Luke?
Yeah, I think, along those same lines, I think it's interesting that he said that peace is not just the absence of conflict, but it's the restoration process. And I think for a lot of people, they just see the conflict. Well, if we could just get rid of conflict, but they don't really think about the restoration process after.
No, we think of peace kind of like we might approach Thanksgiving or Christmas and go, all right, we're not going to talk about politics. We're not going to talk about masks.
Right.
We're not going to talk about all those hot button issues. We'll just put them away and we'll kind of pretend. It's much, much, much more difficult to then say, I'm going to be in relationship with these people that I know I don't agree with.
Right.
That is way difficult. The idea of shalom, I've always loved this idea that it is as it was in the beginning, that the shalom of God is where the effective will of God is everywhere. So the range of his will is like it was in the Garden of Eden.
As he created.
As he created to be. And so when we greet each other, kind of like, do you remember the rejoice? Was that last week that we talked about rejoice? And rejoice was a greeting, and that might have been a sermon thing. But shalom, of course, is a greeting, and it's kind of like aloha. It's hello and goodbye. But what they're saying to you is what? May the peace of God be yours. May you find completeness.
Well, Which, when you think about it, as a greeting and a salutation,
Sure.
is wonderful, because as you meet someone, you say shalom. So may this time together be filled with
Yes.
the peace of God. And then as you depart from each other, what greater blessing can you pray on someone than the peace of God be with you?
Now, think about when Jesus says in his prayer that your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. He's praying for the same thing. He's praying that the kingdom of God, the shalom of God, the completeness of God
Be restored.
Yes, would encapsulate all of creation. Okay, so let's get to some biblical scriptures here, Luke. Let's go to John 14. This is, of course, the stage is the night before the crucifixion, and we hear Jesus say this.
Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. You heard me say, I am going away, and I am coming back to you. If you love me, you would be glad that I am going to the Father, for the Father is greater than I. I have told you now before it happens, so that when it does happen, you will believe. I will not say much more to you, for the prince of this world is coming. He has no hold over me, but he comes so that the world may learn that I love the Father and do exactly what my Father has commanded me.
Wow. Okay, so I want to take this back right to the first part of that passage. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give as the world gives. What in the world does he mean there? That he doesn't give as the world gives. How is Jesus' peace different from the world's peace?
Right. I think the peace that the world would give you is a self-fulfilling peace, to say, well, you're wealthy, so life's going to be easier for you, right? Or you have popularity, so you have peace that people are always going to surround you.
The peace of the world, see if this holds, is taking care of all the symptoms that ail you.
It's not getting to the root of the problem.
Not getting to the disease, but I can medicate you. I can make you not feel the pain.
Right.
And so if we add all these things, you said some of them, but when you talk about what really upsets the peace, there's not really a worldly cure for that.
No, what you mentioned earlier, like at Thanksgiving, when you agree not to discuss certain topics, you have a cessation of conflict, but then you don't replace it with a relationship. You replace it with just barely being courteous,
Right.
just politeness.
Right. And we're going to hold on to. I remember one of the first things I remember a preacher ever saying was, he was preaching about forgiveness, and he said, you can't say I forgive you to your brother and then burn rubber down the street. And I think it's because he said burn rubber, and I was 8, and I thought that was really cool. But he's like, you can't say with your mouth what your heart doesn't really believe. That's not really peace. You're being I like what people say, peacekeeper instead of a peacemaker. So I want to dig a little bit deeper. Let's go to that Matthew 6 passage, Luke. And Clint, you can read this for us. Because we're going to talk about worry and the outer and the inner. Go ahead.
Matthew 6. Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothes? Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? Can any one of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life?
So if worrying doesn't work, because this is really what Jesus is pointing out. He plays the Dr. Phil card. How's that working out for you?
Right.
Worrying's not adding anything to your life. Why do you think we go to it so much? Why do we turn that knob thinking it's going to get us something? Why do we spin our I'm going to use another metaphor. Why do we spin our legs on that wheel when we know we're not going anywhere?
Right. It's really easy to think of worst case scenario, right? It's really easy to think about.
Catastrophizing, I call
Right.
it.
Yeah. It's really easy to focus on the negatives instead of the positives, because usually when we think of consequence, it's the same thing. We think of negative consequences before positive consequences, and so I think the same thing happens in our day to day. We happen to think, well, what is the worst possible thing that could happen to me today?
But how does that help? How does it
It
help?
doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
But we do it. I do it. I did it. I've catastrophized at least once today, and will probably do it 4 times before I go to bed.
Well, as you have mentioned several times, one reason why in your life is you saw it modeled.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I saw it modeled. My grandmother would trump your mother in worrying, and that's hard to believe.
if there was a way that it could kill you, my mother could point it out to you.
Yes.
You know, don't eat that. It'll give you worms. Everything would give you worms. Or he drives like a maniac. People didn't just drive too fast. They drove like a maniac. Gonna break his neck. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think another huge thing that with modern technology is if you do something great, you don't see that on social media. You don't see that on the news. The moment somebody messes up,
Yes.
It's
everyone
everywhere.
sees it. And here's the thing with social media is Jamie in Bismarck can read about it
Yes.
if it hits on social media.
Right.
So you're not just worried about your inner circle of friends, the outer circle of friends. You're worried about people from all over the world. You make a mistake, it gets on social media, and that's why we worry.
There's a great case study. It's a fun thing to go read about a gal who dropped a tweet. She tweeted and then got on a plane to go to South Africa. And she was a writer. She was like a freelance writer. And by the time she landed in South Africa, her entire life had been destroyed.
Yeah.
The tweet went viral. They started doing what we talked about, that cancel culture. And she lost her job. She was unemployable. I'll try to maybe find it and tag it in the comments or something like that. But it's a fascinating story of how quickly those things. Okay, but I want to get one more thing about worrying, because there's this idea that if we feel about something, it will change that something. Stay with me here. If I worry about it, then it's got to get better. But worrying isn't solving the problem, right?
Doesn't impact it at
Doesn't
all.
impact it at all. So test this. It's a good social media test. How often are people just calling you to feel about something? I just want you to be outraged. I want you to be mad. I want you to agree with me. But there's no real call to action of, I want you to go and do this. That's why peacemaking is so hard, because it requires work, not simply feeling. I hear this quite a lot, and I'm going to just get right into the big middle of our COVID pandemic crisis, blah, blah, blah. People say, folks need to take it more seriously. Okay, I do, we do, but when you say that to somebody who's already taking it more seriously,
It's
then
not seriously enough.
then I don't know what they could do. Could you just sit there and kind of bear down and think more seriously? But instead, what if we said, these are the actions we need to pursue. These are the things that we need to do. I'm going to tie this up because we're long on the clock. But here's the passage of Ephesians 2, and I'll end it with this. Here's the work that Jesus does. Are you ready? Verse 14. For he himself is our peace, who's made the two groups one and has destroyed the barrier, the dividing wall of hostility, by setting aside in the flesh the law with its commands and regulations. His purpose was to create in himself one new humanity out of the two, thus making peace. Jesus did not feel a certain way about humanity and make peace. Jesus didn't preach a certain way about humanity and make peace. Instead, Jesus laid down his life. He did the really, really hard work. All right, questions for discussion. And Clint, you're exempt from this because you're our special guest. But what are some questions that you might use to discuss? When is it hard? When is it hard to make peace? Mm-hmm. Who are the people that you have a hard time making peace with? And then talk about strategies. Okay, somebody was mean to you and you want to be a little bit mean back. What's a better strategy for solving that? Luke?
And I would say, who have you removed yourself from to remove a conflict, but yet haven't gone back and worked on the restoration? Because I think it's really easy.
That's good.
During a fight, during an argument, it's really easy to say, well, I just removed them, right? I got rid of the conflict.
It's called ghosting.
Right.
We just ghost them.
Right.
Yeah.
But what work have you done in restoring that relationship? finding that
questions.
peace. Yeah.
Clint, is there special guest?
You said I was exempt.
Final word?
I think it's interesting, going back to the video of Shalom, and wherever the Greek word is that I can't pronounce, that
No, go ahead.
when the angels announced the birth of Jesus,
Oh, yes.
they spoke about this is bringing peace on earth, goodwill toward men, from God to his creation. So it wasn't merely Emmanuel come to earth, but Emmanuel coming to restore peace with man.
He brought the peace with him. He brought the rolls. He brought the good potato salad. I love it. That's a great place to end. Peace, shalom to you, and thanks for joining us for our very last Words with Friends.